Discovering Iran's Divine Destiny. 7 Miraculous Scriptural Truths Revealed for Transformation. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, the Lord delivered Jehoiakim into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. The Israelites found themselves captives in a foreign land, yearning for the rhythms of their homeland, clinging to the promises of God amid suffering and despair. The center of their exile, Susa, a city of royal splendor, loomed with its gilded palace, a stark juxtaposition to their hearts laden with grief and uncertainty. It was here that young Esther, the orphan girl raised by her cousin Mordecai, discovered her Jewish heritage and the weight of her people's anguish in a land that felt like a distant nightmare. As she grew in beauty and grace, her radiance caught the eye of King Ahasuerus, who, in a moment of desire, summoned her to the palace. The call to royalty brought its own burdens, for Esther understood that her ascent came threaded with peril. In the depths of the court, a sinister plot brewed, masterminded by Haman, the king's trusted advisor, whose hatred for the Jews was steeped in vengeance. Mordecai, ever watchful, warned her of the storm that surrounded them, whispering, "And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" His words etched deep within her heart, awakening a flicker of hope within the encroaching darkness. Each day, as Esther donned her royal garments, woven with threads of gold, she felt the weight of the crown and of the Jewish people upon her shoulders. Her beauty could not shield her from the insidious cruelty lurking in the hearts of men. Fear gripped her as she realized she would soon be faced with an impossible decision: conceal her identity or risk revealing the truth that could spark calamity. Esther summoned her courage and resolved to host a banquet for the king and for Haman, a strategic move driven by a divine urgency. Yet, moments before the feast, dread clawed at her insides. To enter the king's presence without summons could lead to her execution. Grief threatened to overshadow her purpose. In the quiet of her soul, she prayed, calling upon the God of her ancestors for strength, feeling Mordecai's faith anchor her spirit. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select All Notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As the lavish banquet commenced, laughter echoed off the marble walls, yet Esther's heart raced with a tempest of dread and resolution. The time had come for her voice to break the chains of silence. Clutching her goblet, she steeled herself against the uncertainty of fate as the king and Haman feasted at her table. It was a moment laden with divine significance, a chance to reveal her true identity and confront Haman's deadly designs. As her pulse quickened, the air thick with anticipation, Esther prepared to unveil the truth. She sensed that God's providential hand was intricately at work, weaving through the tapestry of her life, and perhaps, the salvation of her people hung in the balance of her revelation. Would Esther step into her destiny? A divine mystery awaited the courageous heart that dared to speak. As the banquet unfolded, Esther's gaze flickered between the opulent grandeur of the hall and the sharp visage of Haman, whose smile concealed malice. The atmosphere thickened, laden with unspoken truths. She could feel the weight of her people's suffering pressing against her heart, urging her towards the precipice of boldness she had been so reluctant to embrace. Ahasuerus, his eyes bright with indulgence, turned to Esther and said, "What is your wish, Queen Esther?" "It shall be granted to you, even to the half of my kingdom." The moment hung suspended in time, the words echoing as if they bore the weight of not just a request, but the very lives of her kin. Esther's breath caught. "If it pleases the king," she began, her voice steadying, "I have prepared a banquet where I wish for you and Haman to dine again tomorrow." Her request, seemingly simple, masked the strategic urgency behind it. For in her heart, she knew that tonight was merely a prelude to the revelation that the morrow would demand. Haman, buoyed by being chosen for this exclusive gathering, departed the banquet in high spirits, oblivious to the danger that lurked within the shadows of his ambition. Yet as he passed Mordecai at the king's gate, the Jews' defiance ignited Haman's fury anew. He returned home, seething, and confided in his wife and friends about his newfound honor and the bitter thorn of Mordecai's insolence. They counseled him to prepare a gallows and elevate himself above the contempt that Mordecai stirred in him. That night, plans of death brewed alongside the wine flowing through his veins. Meanwhile, in the stillness of the palace, King Ahasuerus lay restless, tormented by a sense of impending calamity. Seeking peace in the silence, he summoned the records of his reign, longing for distraction. As the chronicles unfolded, he heard of Mordecai's past valor, how he had uncovered an assassination plot against the king. Ahasuerus was struck, realizing he had not honored this faithful servant. "Who is in the court?" he questioned. Just then, Haman entered, poised to propose destruction for Mordecai. Before he could lay out his wicked intentions, the king spoke first. "What shall be done to the man whom the king delights to honor?" Haman, filled with prideful delusion, imagined the honor was meant for himself and laid out a grand plan for a royal parade dressed in the king's robes, riding the king's steed. The king's words fell like thunder upon him, "Go, do so to Mordecai the Jew." Awash in confusion and bitterness, Haman found himself leading the very man he loathed through the streets, a heavy burden of hypocritical praise resting upon his shoulders. That night, at the hands of divine orchestration, Esther and Mordecai's destinies intertwined in the weave of God's larger narrative for his people. The gallows erected for Mordecai now stood as a monument to Haman's folly. As the dawn's light crept over the horizon, Esther readied herself for a final revelation. The banquet awaited, but so did a proclamation from heaven, one that would alter the course of history and rescue a people poised on the brink of annihilation. Was Esther's boldness truly a reflection of her faith? What divine mysteries lay ahead for the Jewish nation? Like threads woven in a tapestry, the time had come for revelation. The sacred plan of the Almighty was unfolding, and with each step taken, it beckoned the question: how would God's glorious purpose be accomplished through his chosen? As the sun rose over the empire, a golden light filled the palace, illuminating the chambers where Queen Esther prepared herself for the day's momentous banquet. Every brushstroke of her silken garments, every adornment of her hair, was infused with both beauty and resolve, as if she were being readied not only for a feast but for a battle of the spirit. In her heart, a tempest raged. Fear and faith danced together, each vying for dominance. Yet in the silence of prayer, she found strength. "O Lord of hosts," she whispered, "grant me courage and wisdom. You are the God who sees the plight of your people. In you, I place my trust." Her words echoed in the stillness, a powerful invocation of the God who had led her people through the desert, sheltered them in the shadows, and promised them a future. Outside the gates, Mordecai paced, his heart heavy with trepidation. As the news of Esther's banquet spread, whispers of hope mingled with the sobering knowledge of Haman's malice. "What shall be the fate of my people?" he pondered, gazing upwards as if seeking an answer from the heavens. It was then that he remembered the prophecy of their deliverance, that a remnant would rise again. At that hour, Haman, still riding the momentum of his earlier victories, approached the palace with his heart swelling in pride. He knew not that the very gallows he had constructed stood waiting for him, a testament to his ambition and disdain. His mind was consumed with visions of the accolades he would receive at the banquet, blind to the harbingers of judgment gathering like storm clouds. As Queen Esther entered the banquet hall adorned in royal splendor, all eyes turned toward her. Ahasuerus marveled at her brilliance, while Haman's heart quickened with glee, ignorant of the heavy curtain that God was drawing across his fate. Esther's voice, steady and graceful, broke through the din of jubilations. "King Ahasuerus," she began, her heart racing as she grasped for the words imbued with both authority and vulnerability. "If I have found favor in your eyes, let me reveal the burdens of my heart, for they are heavy with the weight of my people." Her plea hung in the air, vibrating with the gravity of her purpose. Perplexed, Ahasuerus leaned closer. "What is this request, my queen?" he asked, intrigue masking the concern reflected in his brow. "An edict has been passed to destroy my people, the Jews," she declared, her voice unwavering. If we perish, it shall be by no fault of our own, but by the wickedness of Haman." The name fell from her lips like a sword, cutting through the pretense of the evening. Haman's countenance soured, turning from anticipation to dread, as the weight of her revelation pressed upon the room. The silence that followed was pregnant with a profound realization the true nature of evil had been unmasked. Ahasuerus, enraged, turned his gaze toward Haman, whose life now rested precariously on the precipice of judgment. "What is this wretched plot that threatens my queen?" With the walls around him closing in, Haman's heart raced. What began as intoxicating ambition had devolved into a nightmare. In frantic desperation, he grasped at straws, imploring Esther for mercy. Yet, the hand of God poised the scales of justice, and the time for reckoning had come. In that climactic moment, Esther's courage gave birth to a new destiny. Mordecai's faith intertwined with her boldness, the tapestry of God's sovereign will drawing nearer to its completion. But as the heavens held their breath, the question lingered: how would this revelation lead to deliverance not just for Esther and her people, but for generations yet to come? The shadow of divine intervention loomed larger, revealing further mysteries undiscovered. Was this the moment of their redemption, or merely the initial tremor of a greater seismic upheaval? In that charged silence, as Ahasuerus glared at Haman, the air thickened with anticipation. Esther stood firm, her heart a battleground between the fear of what lay ahead and the faith that had brought her thus far. The king's voice, booming like thunder, shattered the stillness. "Haman, you shall answer for this evil." Haman, struck with horror, trembled before the throne. "My lord," he stammered, "I did not seek harm against the queen or her people. It was born of pride and folly, I beseech you." But his pleas fell on deaf ears, swallowed by the rush of divine justice awakening in that royal hall. Ahasuerus turned to his guards: "Take this monster away. Execute him upon the very gallows he built for Mordecai." The words rang out like a celestial decree, sealing Haman's fate. As they led Haman away, Esther's breath escaped her in a near sigh of relief. Yet her heart was still burdened, for although a personal victory had been won, the fate of her people still hung in the balance. With eyes upward, she whispered once more, "Lord, now help your people." Then, emboldened by strength from above, she approached the king again, her courage renewed. "O sovereign, grant me this further wish: let a decree be issued to save the Jews from annihilation. The wicked plot of Haman has been thwarted, but the edict is still in effect. Let another be given, to spare our lives and to turn the tide against our enemies," she implored. King Ahasuerus, still seething with indignation, nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, my queen, though the laws of the Medes and Persians cannot be revoked, let us craft a new decree that counteracts the old. Mordecai shall ascend to a position of honor, and he shall write this new proclamation." Esther's spirit soared. The king summoned Mordecai into the presence of the court and entrusted him with the royal signet. Joy surged through the hearts of the Jews, as Mordecai wrote letters to each province, reversing Haman's edict, proclaiming liberty and protection for the people of God. An edict to fight back against those who would attempt to destroy us, was the rallying cry that swept through the cities. The loyalty of the king shone forth, emboldened by the faith of his queen and the courage of Mordecai. The celebration of Purim was soon established, a festival of remembrance for their deliverance. But the heavens were not yet finished with Esther, for the story unfolds beyond mere survival. With Haman's treachery laid to rest, the providence of God was set in motion. The hearts of many turned with fear of the Jews, revering their God who had intervened so powerfully. As the days progressed, Esther contemplated the layers of the heavenly tapestry woven around her. She understood that her journey was more than her own, it was the fulfillment of every promise whispered through the ages, the deliverance alluded to since the time of her ancestors. "Who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" murmured Mordecai's words in her mind, a seed planted to bloom in the fertile soil of her trials. Yet as the sun set on that fateful day, dark clouds loomed on the horizon of history. For amid their triumph, the whispers of deeper conspiracies stirred once again. What more did God have in store, not just for Esther and Mordecai, but for an entire nation. As the echoes of jubilation filled the land, another question arose, lingering in the heavens waiting to be unveiled. What role would the descendants of Esther and Mordecai play in the unfolding divine saga? A new chapter awaited, and the reader stood on the precipice of a revelation. God's sovereign plan to resound throughout ages had only just begun. As the days turned to weeks, the kingdom buzzed with renewed hope and fervor. The Jews, emboldened by the edict of Mordecai, began to gather in strength. They prepared for battle, for it was not merely survival they sought, but the total annihilation of those who desired their destruction. It was thus, under the hand of their sovereign God, that they took up arms and made ready to stand against their adversaries. Yet amid the preparations, Esther found herself in deep contemplation. The weight of her position pressed heavily upon her heart, and she often withdrew to seek the counsel of the Lord. "What shall we do, O God of Israel?" she prayed fervently. The memory of her ancestors' cries echoed in her mind, their lamentations a rhythm of sorrow that intertwined with the promises of their deliverance. Mordecai. Esther called upon him one evening as twilight descended upon the royal court. He entered, his face reflecting the fire of righteous zeal. "We find ourselves in perilous times. While we have been granted a decree, the hearts of our enemies still devise wicked plots against us. What must we seek in the days to come?" Mordecai, with the wisdom of one who had walked through trials, spoke firmly, "We must prepare our hearts as one, fervent in prayer and united in purpose. It is time to gather the entire nation, to fast and beseech the Almighty. For we cannot forget that behind our strength lies the divine hand that guides us." Esther nodded, resolution igniting in her heart. "Let it be proclaimed throughout the provinces, a fast for 3 days. We shall not eat nor drink as we seek the favor of the Lord. Then, I shall go before the king, though it may be against the law. And if I perish, then I perish," she affirmed with steely determination that echoed the words of the faithful. Thus, throughout the land, the cry of fasting rang out. The people of God came together, their hearts knit as one, rising to plead for divine mercy. They prayed for strength, for safety, and for God's providential hand to turn the fate of their nation. Day and night, on the wings of prayer, their voices ascended unto the heavens, each plea a testament to their faith. At the end of the 3rd day, Esther dressed in her royal robes, her heart steadfast as she approached the inner court. The light of the throne room glinted off the golden artifacts, yet it was the motion of her heart that captivated the heavens more than the gold's shimmer. She trembled but did not waver, for she understood the depth of her calling. King Ahasuerus raised his gaze, the throne seeming more like a trap to her than a place of authority. But as he extended his golden scepter, granting her permission to approach, an overwhelming peace engulfed her spirit. "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request?" he inquired, poised and regal. "My lord," Esther spoke, her voice steady yet gentle. "If it pleases the king, I wish to invite you and Haman to a banquet I have prepared. There, I will reveal my petition." Haman, puffed up with pride, accepted eagerly, his thoughts wrapped in self-glory. But unbeknownst to him, the essence of a divine plan unfurled, a plan woven long before time began, where a people's fate hung not in the balance of man's pride but in the palm of Almighty God's hand. As the banquet commenced that evening, Esther noticed a peculiar tension in the air, a whisper of destiny, an almost tangible awareness of imminent revelation. She would unearth the truth and reveal the peril they faced together, unveiling the unseen battle of hearts and spirits, for God was about to manifest his mightiest act. What were these plans? Could it be that the whispers of the night and the stirrings within her heart were paving the way for God's ultimate declaration? The stage was set for a confrontation that would resonate through the corridors of generations to come. The fullness of God's sovereign purpose teetered on the edge of a knife, ready to be revealed. As the evening light lingered, the banquet hall gleamed with opulence, the air thick with the aroma of choice delicacies. Esther, in her delicate yet resolute heart, felt the weight of her people's fate pressing heavily upon her. There, seated next to the king, was Haman, his dark heart yet to be pierced by the truth that awaited revelation. Ahasuerus raised his goblet, and with a grand flourish, proclaimed, "Let joy and celebration fill this night. Let us feast, for all is well within our empire." His laughter echoed, but to Esther, it felt like distant thunder, concealing heartache just beneath its surface. She steeled herself, for she knew the moment had come. "My lord, if it pleases you, allow me to make my request known." Her voice, though light in tone, bore the gravity of heaven. The king, intrigued, leaned closer. "Speak, my queen. What is it that troubles your heart?" With her eyes voracious for divine wisdom, she glanced at Haman, whose prideful visage began to fade into the shadows of his impending doom. "O King Ahasuerus," she began, her voice unwavering, "I stand before you not merely as your queen but as a Jewess, a daughter of the covenant. A decree has been written against my people, destined for our destruction at the hands of vile men." Those words struck the air like a lightning bolt, causing the revelry to still. The king's brow furrowed, while Haman shifted uncomfortably, awareness dawning within him like a portent of impending ruin. "Who is it that would dare bring such peril upon you?" the king asked, rage flickering in his eyes. Esther straightened, emboldened by the Spirit of the Almighty. "It is Haman, the enemy of my people. His wickedness has sown seeds of division and death." With this declaration, silence cloaked the room, heavy and pregnant with anticipation. Haman's face blanched, and he rose, trembling as if the very floor had quaked beneath him. "My queen, I meant only good for the kingdom. Your people are treacherous." His pleas fell hollow, swallowed by the truth that hung like a sword in the air. The king, in a fury fueled by betrayal, commanded, "Bring forth Haman's wicked decree, and let justice be served. Who would seek the blood of innocent lives for gain?" The guards, realizing the gravity of the situation, moved swiftly to execute the king's command. Through the suffocating tension, Esther sensed the unfolding of God's sovereign plan. The very ground tasted of victory that retained the flavor of redemption. "Like a thief in the night, the wicked will be revealed," whispered the Spirit to her heart. Thus, the scroll was brought forth, the decree inscribed in the king's seal. As judgment drew near, the people of Israel, united in fervent prayer, awaited liberation as their cries ascended once again to heaven. In the shadow of Haman, now stripped of his power, the heart of the nation vibrated with hope renewed. For God had not turned his face away, the deliverance of his people was at hand. As the sun set on a night laced with divine confrontation, the echoes of providence stirred the heavens. What more shall unfold? The faithful wondered, for the story of God's sovereign design danced on the lips of believers. Will Haman face the fate he sought for another, or shall the tides change, drawing forth a revelation that none would expect? Little did they know, the chapters yet unwritten held the keys to a future that would span generations, unfolding the everlasting promise of the Almighty. The guards returned with the scroll, its seal glinting ominously in the candlelight, a harbinger of judgment. Ahasuerus, with a heart smote by betrayal, surveyed Haman, whose terror was palpable, trembling like a reed in the wind. "Read!" commanded the king, his voice reverberating through the hall, a sound that stilled even the whispers of hope among the people. The scribe unfurled the scroll, and his voice trembled as he read the decree. "On the 13th day of the 12th month, all Jews in the kingdom shall be destroyed, and their possessions taken as plunder." Each word dripped with malice, casting shadows of despair upon Esther and her kin. Those present held their breath, a collective gasp spilling forth, as the gravity of Haman's plot became undeniable to all. Ahasuerus fixed a furious gaze upon Haman. "Is there no end to your treachery? You have sought to lay waste to a people who hold favor in my sight. You would turn joy into mourning." The king's voice rose, echoing with righteous indignation, a fierce tempest that threatened to engulf Haman whole. Esther, feeling a mix of dread and anticipation, stepped forward again, emboldened by the Spirit's assurance that she was positioned for such a time as this. Esther 4 verse 14. "My Lord, let the decree be reversed. For the lives of my people hang in the balance, and your fidelity and justice will shine upon this land. Ahasuerus turned his gaze from the trembling adviser before him to the resolute queen who stood firm in the truth. "What shall be thy judgment, O Haman?" His voice dripped with authority as the court watched with bated breath. "The very man who cast the die upon my unsuspecting people, shall he not taste the bitterness he has sought for them?" Haman, now fully aware that the dark veil of his wicked intentions had been torn asunder, fell at Esther's feet, desperate and trembling. "O Queen! I beg your mercy. I had thought your people a threat to my position, but surely not your life, no harm done to you." His pleas faltered as he uttered words he never imagined he would have to speak. As Ahasuerus rose, wrathful and resolute, he commanded, "Take him and hang him on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai, for the wicked shall not escape the judgment of God." There was a haunting victory unto justice as the guard seized Haman, leading him to face the fate he had designed for another, a fitting recompense. As the clamor of the court arose murmurs of astonishment mingling with shouts of praises, Esther's heart rejoiced, and yet it was a sober rejoicing, for she knew the struggle was not yet over. Mordecai, she whispered to herself, remembering the faithful uncle who had raised her. He must be honored. With quickened feet, she approached the king once more. "Let a new decree be established, my lord. For the Jews shall defend themselves and be vindicated against their foes. Let us make known the folly of Haman and remind your kingdom of the steadfast love of our God." The monarch nodded, his countenance shifting from fury to contemplation. "What shall we inscribe? What proof shall remain of this deliverance?" Esther, her heart emboldened by truth, replied, "Let the lamentation of our people turn to festival, where joy shall replace fear and the glory of the Lord shall be proclaimed in every corner." Thus, the scrolls were once again unraveled, words of hope and deliverance immortalized for generations. In that moment, the eyes of heaven seemed to descend upon the scene, a shimmering promise that salvation had come, yet still beckoning for deeper understanding. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a resolve took root within the hearts of the people. They felt the breath of God's mercy whisper anew, kindling a flame of faith that would echo through ages. What more is to unfold in the tapestry of his plan, as his people rise and declare, "For such a time as this, we have been chosen to bear witness to his wonders." As dawn broke upon the kingdom of Ahasuerus, the air was charged with anticipation and relief, yet the weight of duty pressed upon Esther's heart like a heavy mantle. The decree must be written swiftly, for time was of the essence. The 13th day loomed ominously on the calendar, and the hearts of her people yearned for deliverance. Esther stood before the scribe once more, her spirit aflame with purpose. "Write promptly to all the provinces," she commanded, her voice steady and resolute. "Proclaim that the Jews shall gather and defend themselves against their adversaries, armed not only with weapons but with the knowledge that the Lord their God has fought for them." The scribe diligently inked the words, the quill gliding like the divine will, capturing Esther's fervent hopes. "And let the names of our foes be known," she added, "that all might see the fate that befalls those who would rise against God's chosen." As the edict took form, Mordecai, the wise uncle, received the news. His heart soared with joy, for his faithfulness had not gone unnoticed. He wore the garments of mourning no longer, but clad himself in royal attire, knowing that God's providence was at work. "Today, we shall speak of hope," he told the gathered congregation, their faces alight with purpose. "For though darkness encircled us, the dawn of deliverance shall soon break." News of the new decree spread rapidly, igniting a flame of jubilant courage within the Jews of the kingdom. They gathered, their hearts fortified, sharing stories of hope, recalling the faithfulness of God who had parted the sea and brought forth water from the rock. No longer would they tremble in the shadows, they would defy the odds, emboldened under the banner of their sovereign Lord. Meanwhile, the leaders of the provinces, having received the king's new command, were thrown into confusion. They transformed their fear into cunning plots, seeking ways to thwart what they perceived as an uprising. But little did they know the resolve of Esther and the spirit that fueled her. The whispers of history echoed in their ears: the God of Israel would not abandon his people. Each night in the palace, the prayers of Esther ascended like incense. She implored the Almighty for wisdom, strength, and for the hearts of the people to turn towards him. Let not despair take root. She beseeched. May the events unfold as part of your greater work, for we are but instruments of your mercy. As the days marched forth, the designated time approached. Fear turned to strength as the Jews prepared for battle. Into their hearts was woven the tapestry of fervent prayers and a communal spirit, their unity a testament to God's enduring promise. On the eve of the fateful day, a question reverberated through their gathered assembly, a challenge rising and falling on their lips: shall we not cry out to the Lord? They fell to their knees, seeking his face. For he is our refuge and strength, they declared in unison, hearts now beating as one. In the court of the king, as the shadows lengthened, the decisions of men were but mere threads in the grand weave of God's design. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the kingdom and affirm the faithfulness of divine purpose. What will unfold on this day of destiny? Esther pondered, her heart attuned to the whisper of the Spirit. Thus, as the first rays of the sun broke upon the horizon, awakening not only a new day but a new chapter in the narrative of divine salvation, the people of Israel stood ready. They sensed the breach of heaven, lingering with the promise of miracles. And a rumbling in the heavens declared, what more lies within God's sovereign plan as he gathers the threads of fate, weaving them into a tapestry of redemption. As the dawn illuminated the kingdom of Ahasuerus, the hearts of the Jews resonated with a fervent expectation. Esther, bathed in the light of a new day, rose to her feet, bearing the weight of her people's fate upon her shoulders. Today was not merely another day, it was the day set by the Almighty, an appointed time for his intervention. Mordecai, she called out, her voice filled with conviction, gather the elders and lead our people in prayer. For today, we shall see the hand of God move among us. With urgency, the news spread through the streets, invigorating the spirit of those who had gathered in fear just days before. They assembled, their faces upturned as if seeking heaven, shoulders squared with renewed strength. Let every family prepare, shouted Mordecai, clad in garments of joy, the former ashes of mourning now replaced with glory. For we shall not fight alone, the Lord our God shall go before us. The people began to chant the words of the psalmist, I will lift up my eyes to the hills, where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. With hearts united, they took shouts of praise unto the heavens. In the palace, Ahasuerus was restless. As a king accustomed to sovereign control, he found the rising tide of events unsettling. His counselors whispered among themselves, laying plots born out of trepidation. This Queen Esther has roused a fierce spirit among the people, one advisor muttered. If we do not act swiftly, the balance of power may shift. Yet, unbeknownst to them, the true power lay not in the king's hands, but in the sovereign will of Yahweh. The king called upon Esther, urgency etched onto his brow. What is troubling you, my queen? He inquired. Esther approached, her countenance steady despite the turmoil swirling around her. If it pleases the king, she replied, drawing strength from her trust in God, let an edict be made that the Jews may gather and defend themselves freely against any adversary. Ahasuerus nodded, a new understanding dawning upon him. He sensed the rightful anger of a people wronged and the divine mandate fueling Esther's plea. So be it, he declared, and he summoned the scribe, who hurried in to transcribe the new decree. Let it be known, in every city, on the 13th day of the month of Adar, the Jews shall stand united with courage and fortitude. Outside, the air crackled with excitement as the news echoed, bringing forth a spirit of mobilization. Our God has provided. The people cried, emboldened in their unity. They fasted and prayed, seeking divine favor and guidance. Great is thy faithfulness, O Lord. They proclaimed, likening their plight to the cries of old, when Israel faced the Red Sea. As the sun reached its zenith, the hearts of the opposition quivered in despair. Haman, having plotted dark schemes, found his grip on power loosened. The tables were turning, and in a prophetic twist, the enemies of Israel would soon know fear where there was once pride. But how often does one's downfall serve as a canvas for divine vindication? That evening, Esther stood before her people. Remember, beloved ones, she declared, her voice ringing clear. "We are not just defending ourselves, we are fulfilling the destiny our Lord has laid before us. Thus, we proclaim this day shall be a day of remembrance, a day where God's promise of protection shines resplendent." As dusk fell and the stars embroidered the night sky, a whisper stirred within the hearts of the faithful, "Will we not witness God's mighty hand deliver us once more?" And from the shadows where doubt lurked, faith arose in triumphant unison. And amidst the anticipation, the heavens throbbed with excitement, declaring, "What greater wonders does God have yet in store, as his sovereign plan unfolds through his chosen people." As the sun dawned upon the 13th day of Adar, the air was thick with both trepidation and resolve. The cries of the faithful resonated in unified prayer as the Jewish people gathered, emboldened by the edict of Ahasuerus, awaiting the manifestation of their Almighty's deliverance. They sensed the divine stirring among them, the hand of God ready to intervene and weave the threads of fate into a tapestry of salvation. Esther, adorned in the brilliance of strength and poise, stood before her people. "Beloved clan of Israel," she proclaimed with a voice that echoed like a clarion call, "today we face the enemy, not alone, but as a people chosen by God. He has heard our supplications and now we march forth not in fear, but in faith." With hearts attuned to the pulsations of hope, the Israelites grasped their weapons, a testament to the God who saved Daniel from the lions and the children from the furnace. "We shall remember his mighty acts." They rallied, envisioning the walls of Jericho collapsing, the waters of the Red Sea parting, and the clouds of battle scattered like chaff before the winds of heaven's decree. In the palace, Ahasuerus sat unable to shake the sense of foreboding that enveloped him. The whispers of his courtiers fell silent as they sensed the tides turning against them, while the gleam of the royal crown felt heavier upon his brow. Haman, oblivious to the rising storm against his cruel ambitions, smiled wickedly, secure in his arrogance. Surely, he thought, victory would be his. But unbeknownst to him, the shadows harbored the impending doom he had constructed with his own malice. As the day unfolded, the Jews stepped into their destiny with obedience to Esther's leadership. Led by Mordecai, they swept through the cities, raised their voices, and proclaimed their freedom. "For our God is a refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble," they declared, while their enemies trembled in the weight of their collective faith. And the time came when the adversaries unveiled their plans, casting their wicked nets wide, prepared to snatch the unsuspecting Jews into the depths of despair. But as darkness encroached, divine light surged forth with power and vengeance. The spirits of the brave people ignited, and as they fought back, it became clear a heavenly echo was in the air, bearing witness to the justice unfurling before them. "Haman!" shouted one of the city leaders in despair as he saw the valiant Jews rallying against his plots. "They call upon the God of their ancestors. Surely, we are undone, for our strength fails against him." Fear seized the hearts of Haman's men, confusion and infighting erupted within their ranks. In the midst of battle, Esther's faith was ignited. She called out to God, her heart filled with a fervent prayer, "O Lord, avenge our people. Remember your covenant, for you brought us through the fire. May the enemies of Israel fall unknowing into their own traps." And thus, as the sun reached its zenith, the tide turned. The Jews fought with an unquenchable fervor, fortified by the Spirit of their God, unlike any other force. Every swing of their swords, every shout of defiance echoed in the celestial realms, as heaven joined the fray. The heavens rejoiced, for the promise of deliverance had unfolded. Dusk descended, marking not only the end of that fateful day but the beginning of a new dawn for the Jews, a testament to God's relentless mercy. All around, they rallied to celebrate their victory. Dancing and singing erupted, a time of exultation. He has taken our mourning and turned it into joy. And Esther, now crowned not only queen but a leader born of a covenant that defines her lineage, understood her purpose was fulfilled. In a flash, she and Mordecai stood before the people, hands raised, rejoicing with the sound of triumph. "Let the festival of Purim be declared," she announced, her eyes glistening with righteousness. "Let this day forever remind generations of the faithfulness of our God and his intervention. For on this day, we were made free from destruction. And the people shouted with one voice, the sound echoing through the heights of Susa, a cry reverberating through history, we are his, and he reigns victorious. As the feasting continued into the night, decrees flowed forth, establishing this day as a sacred remembrance. Generations to come would tell the tales of Esther's bravery, Mordecai's wisdom, and the unyielding promise of deliverance that echoed across the span of time. Dear friends, this liberating tale breathes life into our spirits. Just as Esther was raised for such a time as this, you too are placed where God's sovereign plan awaits to unfold through you. Take a moment now to prepare your heart. You need to subscribe immediately to stay connected to God's Word and miss none of these powerful biblical stories. If you feel the Spirit moving, leave a like now so we can help spread God's truth through the algorithm. I invite you to comment below with your reflections. How does this biblical story impact your faith? And don't delay, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this powerful testimony of God's deliverance. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth, and only you can make it happen. Don't wait even one more second to share in the triumph of God's divine purpose.